So Become the Night did a tier list of metal subgenres, and then opened it by throwing most of them in the garbage.
Shouldn't exist. There we go. Drone doom, epic doom, stoner doom. Okay, what's experimental versus progressive metal? Brutal death metal. Redundant, redundant, redundant. Melodic death metal.
Now don't send any hate his way because it's his video and he can do what he wants. He makes some pretty good content, but per request, we're gonna rank the full list. And of course, as always, this is entirely based on my own personal taste and is not meant to be an objective determination of which genres are actually better or worse. So let's kick things off with avant-garde metal. I'm a big fan. Love everything that's kind of weird and bizarre and just kind of like throws the rule book in the garbage instead of the genres. And so yeah, stuff like Psy and Igor, like that's what really excites me. That's why I have an innovation scale when I do like an album review. So I'm going to put this one at S tier. Love it. Avant-garde death metal, kind of same things to say here. Now, Become the Night made the argument that like things are kind of like too subdivided here, but to me that's like kind of the point, especially when we're talking about rankings. Like I agree that it's annoying when people constantly like correct you in like a talking down kind of way. If dude, it's not progressive brutal death metal, it's brutal progressive death metal, like the whole like the punk rock MBA meme basically. Like yeah, that sucks. But when we're talking about like the music we love and why we like some of it more than others, like I can't just say like death metal because that encompasses so many different sounds. But anyways, avant-garde death metal, I consider stuff like Gorguts to kind of fit into this, and anything that's kind of like influenced by that. Also Portal comes to mind. So yeah, love that shit too. S tier. War metal, raw black metal. I kind of agreed like a little bit with chuckling over this one, but I know what it is, and I like raw black metal to an extent, but it's definitely kind of like the last thing I'll reach for. So I'm actually putting it for D tier again. Just my opinion. I don't think it's actually bad. It's just I want to utilize all of the tiers here, especially with how many things we have. Atmospheric, ambient, black metal, just not really my thing. Like I can enjoy some of it, but again, not really a go-to for myself. I find it a bit dull, so I'm going to D tier. I know some people love it. Gothic metal as well, kind of cheesy. I like when gothic metal is kind of mixed with other genres, like with death metal, black metal. On its own, I kind of, again, find it a little bit dull, so I'm putting it at D. Progressive metal, I love, and that was that's why I put in that clip. Like, to me, not differentiating between avant-garde and progressive is a very strange. Like, I get avant-garde and experimental, because those are kind of redundant, but progressive is just a style of songwriting that can apply to many different like other subgenres. It has more to do with, you know, longer song lengths. It's not just verse, chorus, verse. You're going with like a different kind of journey for the entire song process. Whereas experimental and avant-garde, that's more so like you can still structurally have like a shorter song, a longer song. You can have progressive avant-garde, and then you can have avant-garde that's not progressive at all. So separate thing. Personally, really enjoy progressive music, especially it seems like the older I get, the more I enjoy it. Straight up progressive metal like Dream Theater isn't like my favorite thing, so I guess if we're just talking about that, it's probably like A or B tier. Now again, another one of those things though, once you start weaving it in with other genres, I fall in love with it. So progressive black metal, stuff like Enslaved, absolutely adore that shit. That's going to S tier. Progressive death metal too, I would say, like stuff like Opeth. Probably another one of my favorite things. It gets a little watered down because now you have progressive death metal these days that's kind of getting a little bit samey. You also could throw in here stuff like Fallujah, I suppose, which I really do enjoy. So I'm going to put it at A tier, actually, right now. He also threw out first wave and second wave black metal, which I think is very odd. I know we're dealing with time periods here, but we're also dealing with sounds. Like first wave black metal is more that early Bathory Venom kind of sound, mostly. Like it's more thrash inspired. Also stuff like Celtic Frost can get thrown in here. I like that stuff. Don't love it. I don't know. I'm going to put that at C tier, personally. Progressive power metal. Again, throwing the progressive in there makes it a little better than just by itself, I would say. But I'm not a huge power metal guy, so I don't know, I'm going to put that at C tier. Symphonic black metal, absolutely love it. Like Emperor, Dimmu Borgir, stuff like that continues to be some of my like favorite music. You throw an orchestra behind some extreme metal, I'm going to listen. And same goes with symphonic death metal, stuff like Flesh God Apocalypse, Septic Flesh, fantastic. Symphonic metal on its own, not a huge fan of it. Can get, again, a little bit corny, but it can be fun too. Like, it varies band to band. I'm kind of opening my mind to this more and more, kind of like power metal too. But for now, I'd say it's kind of like a C tier. Black thrash. I've said in a few videos recently that my two favorite types of thrash are blackened thrash and crossover, which we'll also get to. Love me some blackened thrash, especially stuff like Skeleton Witch. Yeah, really great stuff. Maybe not tip top, but I'm gonna put it at A tier. Progressive thrash also, like, especially Cryptosis, like, blew me away last year. Really fun stuff. Things like Vector. Awesome. A tier. Now, thrash metal by itself, again, like, I feel like thrash, especially just in the modern era, is just better when it's mixed with something else. I love, like, classic thrash. I feel like on its own, it's kind of like run its course in terms of what you can do with it. So I tend to prefer listening to stuff that throws in other subgenre mixes in there. So thrash, going to C tier for me. Death thrash, also quite good. I'm gonna put that at like B tier. Technical death metal. Now this one runs the gamut. Like, this one almost needs to be subdivided more. And again, this is why I appreciate for a list like this separating things out, because it helps me like really determine which thing over which thing. Whereas if it's the broader it is, the more difficult. But technical death metal encompasses like so much, because you've got stuff like Cryptopsy, but then you've also got a lot of the more modern stuff like Archspire, and there's a lot of differences between those things. So it's almost like old school tech versus new school tech. We could go on with that. I really like it, but there's also a lot of like kind of generic paint by numbers stuff that bloats it out. So I don't know. I guess I'd put it at B tier overall, balancing things, but the bands I love, I absolutely love. Brutal death metal, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of like the super duper brutal stuff with like the really just pure like gutturals and like brie constantly. That doesn't really appeal to me. I love when they throw in the brutality mixed in with other stuff, but on its own, I get kind of bored with it, to be totally frank. I don't think it's D. I think that's also C. Second wave black metal, love me some classic second wave black metal, the likes of Immortal, Dark Throne. Solid stuff, not my favorite, but I think worthy of B tier at least. Post black metal also runs the gamut. There's some stuff that I absolutely love, and other stuff that I'm kind of like find boring. So I don't know. I think like B tier for that. Melodic death metal, again, how can you throw out melodic death metal? Like, he makes a whole rant about how he hates the term melodic, but in the case of melodic death metal specifically, this is a term that has been around for a long time, and it has to do with like a very specific movement that was basically started with the Gothenburg scene with the likes of At the Gates, In Flames, Dark Tranquility, Soilwork, Arch Enemy. Like, how can you throw that in the garbage? This is a very important subgenre, if you ask me, and also one of my personal favorites, so I'm putting it at S tier. Doom metal, you all know me, I'm not a huge fan of it, especially by itself. Find it to be a little bit dull, a little slow for my taste. I like Fast and Furious. Groove metal used to be like one of my favorites, especially when I was like getting into Lamb of God in high school and then listening to a lot of Pantera. Somebody asked like, what is groove metal? The best definition I've heard for it is kind of like post-thrash metal. It's like you take thrash metal, you slow it down a bit, you add some bluesier riffs to it, you got you some groove metal. Stuff like Devil Driver fits in here too. I do enjoy a lot of groove metal, but I feel like today it kind of just gets watered down and it's not as good as it used to be. So I don't know, I'm thinking probably like B tier for that one. Alternative metal, this is where you start to like subdivide between this and new metal and things like that. I would say alternative metal encompasses things like Chevelle, like that stuff. Not as much today. I still love the stuff that I used to love, but I'm not as big into it now, so I think it's kind of like C tier. Melodic metalcore, I would say this applies to stuff like Make Them Suffer, more modern things, Polaris, stuff that's a little bit more kind of upbeat, less of the hardcore influence to it. Probably also things like Killswitch Engage that are influenced by melodic death metal as well. I like that style. It's a little bit bloated these days. It's kind of like, it's had some harm done to it over the years. I'm going to put it, split the difference again, put it at B tier. Progressive metalcore, big fan of this, although how progressive it actually is kind of depends, but I enjoy that stuff a lot. So stuff like Periphery definitely fits in here, so yeah, I'm gonna put it at A tier. Metalcore on its own, now without like further subdivision, I'm just classifying this as like the original kind of OG metalcore sound of like the late 90s, early 2000s, things like Poison the Well, Converge, things that much more spawn directly from the hardcore scene, and for that, It's at least an A, maybe an S, because I do really love that stuff. I don't know. I'm going to put it at A for now. Modern deathcore. This one runs the gamut. I have some qualms with how they wrote this one out because I feel like they could have subdivided it instead of by era, by sound a little bit better. It really depends. Like, there's stuff I really love, like Within Destruction, but then there's also stuff like, I like some Slaughter to Prevail, but that new album was pretty meh, in my opinion. So, I don't know, it's okay, it's a little bit better than C, I guess it's a B. Industrial metal, love it, wish there was more of it these days. Everything from the more thrashy stuff like Fear Factory, to Ministry, to Skinny Puppy, which is leaning more into just like pure industrial, love all that stuff. And you know what, I'm gonna put it at S tier. Industrial death metal, I feel like there's not enough examples of this, at least that I've listened to, so it's harder for me to classify that. I like the idea of mixing those things, but I give me more of it, and maybe I'll form a stronger opinion, but I guess I'll put it at B tier. Industrial black metal, on the other hand, I've actually heard a lot of examples of, and I really enjoy that particular fusion. Want to get more of that good stuff. Neue Deutsche Harte, which was also thrown in the garbage on the basis of he couldn't even pronounce it. This refers to stuff like Rammstein. Like, this is what that actually gets classified as. I don't listen to enough of anything beyond Rammstein, though, and as much as I love Rammstein, as a genre, as a full genre, I kind of have to put it at C. Grindcore, by itself, I'm okay with. It's fine. It's like a C tier for me. Avant-garde Grindcore, on the other hand, stuff like more modern Napalm Death, even, I guess, some elements of Wormrot. There's also a band called Beaten to Death that mixes things up a lot. Really enjoy that. I'm putting that at A tier. Hardcore, on its own. I like some hardcore, just pure hardcore. Not in love with it. The scene kind of sickens me, especially the hate brigade that I got over other certain video. But yeah, that kind of brings it down a little bit for me. I'm going to say C. Experimental metal. Now, I do agree with what he had to say that avant-garde and experimental are pretty much interchangeable. They're not necessarily separate things. You could make the argument, but I'll just put it right next to avant-garde at S tier. Gent, I argue, is not really a genre. It's more of like a style of kind of like guitar sound, basically, and it fits, because it fits anything like Meshuggah to, again, Periphery. So, and those things are not the same, right? So it's kind of hard for me to classify this on its own. And it's another one, though, that if we are just looking at the whole scope of gent, quote-unquote, bands out there, it's really bloated. Some I really love, some not so much. I guess I'll put it at B tier. Proto-metal, this is like metal before it was metal. You could argue that stuff like Black Sabbath kind of fits in here, Led Zeppelin, things of that nature. I love that stuff, but it's not really like my go-to, and as far as this list goes, it's pretty low. Heavy metal, same. Like I like heavy metal. I like listening to old Judas Priest, stuff of that nature. But again, one of the last things I'll reach for, C tier. New wave of British heavy metal, getting more specific with that. Specific to the British bands, obviously. Also C tier for me, enjoy it, but not my favorite thing. New wave of Swedish death metal, I feel like that can kind of connect with melodic death metal, but I think this is more referring to kind of stuff like Entombed, which I enjoy. It's not like my favorite, but I do love me just some, those Swedes, they make good metal. I guess I'll put it at A tier. Depressive suicidal black metal, not my thing. Like, just all around, I find it to be very cringe, very boring. There's like no enjoyment I get out of it. But if you enjoy it, more power to you. New wave of American heavy metal. This kind of just goes hand in hand with groove metal, because I feel like a lot of those bands just are now what we call groove metal bands, and this was sort of the term for it for a while. Stuff like, again, Lamb of God. I don't know, I feel like it's sort of an outdated term. I'm going to put it at C tier. Sludge, I enjoy. And it just depends on how it's done. I kind of, again, like it when it's mixed with other stuff. I guess I'll put it at B tier. Stoner Doom, not my thing. Like, especially that style is just not really for me. Progressive Doom, I like quite a bit more. If I'm going to reach for some Doom, if it's progressive, then it'll at least keep me engaged usually. So I guess I'll put that one at B tier. Glam metal, super fun. great stuff to just throw on, and when it comes on the radio, you sing along with it, but still gonna put it at like C tier. Speed metal, fun, not really my thing, kind of putting it alongside with thrash metal in terms of when it goes on its own. C still means good. Keep that in mind. Power metal, also I can enjoy some of it, not in love with it overall as a genre. Nu metal, unapologetically, I love me some nu metal, but I also recognize there's a lot of like really shit nu metal out there too, so I can't quite put it at S tier, although some of my like favorite bands are S tier bands, and they come from those nu metal years. But I have a soft spot for it. I'm gonna put it at A tier, and if that makes you mad, then kick bricks. Folk metal, love folk metal. S tier for me. Another one where I kind of wish we would get more of it on a regular basis. Maybe not so that it becomes bloated, but just so that I have more to dig into each month. Old school death metal, love that stuff. Been doing a lot of tier lists on those bands and those albums that you can check out if you're new here. But I'm going to put that at like B tier. Old school deathcore, stuff like Whitechapel, Suicide Silence, The Red Chord. Good stuff, good stuff. I'm going to put that at B tier. It's interesting because I enjoy this for the intensity and the novelty a bit more. But modern deathcore, I love that it's starting to kind of evolve in different subgenre directions too. Avant-garde black metal would consider stuff like, again, Psy, Imperial Triumphant, Deathspell Omega, I guess, Bluthaus Nord kind of fit into there. Love all that shit. Going to S tier. Modern death metal, really enjoy it, but also kind of gets a little bit bloated. And again, I don't really like classifying just modern death metal because it's like when does that start and when does it end, right? there's a lot of stuff and I did a modern death metal tier list and you can see that because there's so many different things. I'll put it at B tier. Funeral doom, boring, puts me to sleep. Again, if you love it, that's great. Epic doom, not really my thing either. D tier. Drone doom, please. Like, I'm really going to sleep at that point. Dark metal, not a huge fan of that either. Again, another thing I like when it's kind of fused with other stuff, but on its own, kind of dull. Gothic doom, nope. Progressive deathcore, I guess, B tier. Cybergrind, it's good stuff. I like me some Cybergrind. I'm gonna put that at B tier. Neoclassical metal, this again is like more of a playing style than a genre, I feel like. I don't know, I'll put it at C tier. Deathgrind, good fusion kind of stuff there. Stuff like Cattle Decapitation definitely comes up. That's good. I'll put that at A tier. Folk black metal, another one I'd say S tier. Like, folk is already great on its own, but you fuse it with black metal with stuff like Moon Sorrow, and it's a recipe for success. Epic metal, not really my thing. Gore grind, not really my thing. Grunge, I really enjoy, but these days I don't listen to it as much, but that was like my childhood, so gotta at least be B, I would say. Post-hardcore, really enjoy me some post-hardcore. Gonna put that at B. Post-metal, like it much better than Doom. I feel like it kind of goes side by side with sludge, so another B tier. Porno grind, kind of cringe, kind of lame, not a big fan. Stoner metal, not a huge fan of it either. Death doom, I like a lot better than regular Doom. I'm gonna put that at C tier. Crossover thrash, absolutely love when the worlds of like punk, hardcore, and thrash combine. We're talking Municipal Waste, Power Trip, that kind of stuff. Love it. Going A tier. Technical thrash metal, I guess like stuff like Cryptosis would again kind of fit into this. So yeah, I'll put that at A tier. Slam death metal, kind of same thoughts as like brutal death metal. Not in love with it. I don't know. It is kind of low for me. I'm not a big fan of slam. So D tier. Black gaze, again, it depends. Some of it I find really interesting. Some of it I find really boring. So I don't know. I guess C tier. Funk metal, don't listen to that a ton. I like it when I listen to it though, so C tier. Pagan and Viking metal feel like kind of goes with black and folk, but I guess, like, I don't know. Pagan especially, like stuff like Heilung is really interesting to me. I don't know, maybe I could probably put that at S tier actually. Black and Doom, better than Doom on its own, put that at C tier. And then black and death metal, stuff like Behemoth and the like, I'd say that goes at like A tier. And there you go. That was a lot. Too much to fit on one screen. I'll try to shrink it down here so you can kind of see it. There you go. That sort of works, right? But let me know down in the comments, how would you rank these differently? I'll probably link the actual tier list so you can do it, and check out this playlist for plenty more fun metal tier lists. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.